Jerry Brainum here with another common question. This one really beguiles a lot of bodybuilders who worry about. I remember interviewing when I worked for Joe Weider years ago. One of my standard questions when I interviewed elite bodybuilders was how much aerobics do you do when you're training for a contest? And I recall that I'd say at least 50% of them responded that I don't do aerobics before a contest because it causes me to lose muscle. And, I kind of thought about this and I said, well, maybe it's true. And I believed this myself for a couple of years. And then, of course, when I started getting into the research, well, I've been actually studying research for half a century, so it's not really getting into it. But let me put it this way. I read many, many medical article journals which suggested that concurrent training, which is the term that involves including both, let's say, weight training and aerobics in one workout, leads to an interference effect where, doing the aerobics inhibits the processes that lead to muscle hypertrophy. Now, without going into a lot of detail, most of this involves the fact that aerobics tends to increase a protein enzyme called AMPK. Now, here's the thing you have to know about AMPK. It's a very complex subject, AMPK, and it's very important for bodybuilders to know about this stuff because AMPK, by manipulating AMPK as you get older, you will prevent the negative effects of ingesting a high-protein diet on aging and disease. But I'm going to talk about that in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. Way, way too complex to talk about in a video. But the point being, what you need to know now is that one of the things that AMPK does is that it's an energy sensor in muscle. So what it's concerned about is supplying energy to a muscle that shows low energy muscle stores, such as depleted glycogen. And when the release of AMPK is stimulated, usually by, let's say, depleted glycogen stores or low glucose levels, one of the things it does is it stimulates increased use of fat as an energy source, which is great. This is one of the reasons why you burn more fat when you do aerobics. But on the negative side, AMPK also completely halts muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis is the cornerstone, the basis of muscle hypertrophy. So because of this, came the notion that concurrent exercise, weight training aerobics, is incompatible. Now, it makes sense. It does make sense on paper because there's no question that AMPK does rise when you do aerobics, especially if you do them for a longer amount of time, let's say longer than 30 minutes. The AMK will definitely rise, and it definitely does blunt muscle protein synthesis. But here's the problem. There's been a number of studies that looked at this more carefully, and what they discovered now is that the notion that concurrent training inhibits muscle growth is false. It just doesn't happen. Again, the reasons are a little bit too complex to explain here, but suffice to say that you can do your aerobics after you do your weight training, but what I would suggest is not to do more than 30 minutes in one shot, or your other option is to do high-intensity interval training where you can do 20 minutes and get the same benefit of cardiovascular and fat loss as you would get from 60 to 90 minutes of steady state aerobics. So if you do it that way, you won't have any problem with gaining muscle size. The one, let's say, caveat that I would suggest, and I kind of follow this myself, because the final word isn't in yet, I would say like the legs are the one muscle you have to be careful about. I would suggest not doing aerobics directly after leg training because, again, you've just trained your legs. They're in a kind of like state of increased muscle protein synthesis after you complete your workout. I mean, why take the chance of doing anything that could possibly interfere with that? As a consequence, I would suggest not doing aerobics right after your leg training. That's the one that you can do it after upper body, not leg training. The second thing I would recommend is if you do think, for some reason, that aerobics are inhibiting your muscle growth, very simply, all you have to do is separate by a couple of hours. I'd say about 6 hours would be ideal, or 6 hours or longer. Separate your weight workout from your aerobics workout and you completely obliterate the interference effect. Or alternately, if you don't do your aerobics every day, you could do your aerobics on your rest days or your off days. So, it doesn't interfere with your weight training. So that answers the question. I would not worry. Generally, I still do. Personally, I do my aerobics after every upper body workout. I do not do it on leg day. When I did do it on leg day years ago, my legs were a lot stronger back then because I didn't have knee arthritis. I can tell you that the studies claim you won't get bigger and stronger if you do aerobics after weight training, but that doesn't explain how I was able to use up to 650 pounds in squats, and my thighs were probably about 29, 30 inches. I admit they're sticks now because I can't use any weight anymore. But I never, this is anecdotal, I admit it's only one person, but I've seen this with many others. I've never, ever noted any interference with muscle size by doing aerobics directly after my workout. But again, if you're worried about it, use the techniques I mentioned, and you'll find much. I've had 2 articles going into great detail about the science behind concurrent training in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. They're available to any subscriber. You can check them on the online archive. And I strongly suggest, if you want information on exercise science, nutrition, hormonal therapy, anti-aging, fat loss research, subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter. 33 cents a day, no ads, no bullshit, 40 to 50 pages every month. Pure science, no lies, no ads. I'm not trying to sell you anything. What you find in my newsletter, you will not find anywhere else. I promise you that. You will learn a lot. Take care.
And you look at Ronnie and me competing, we're completely different also, but that was a winning physique. So I don't think it really matters. I think it's in the eye of the beholder and the judges themselves. It's interesting now that the look that I kind of had is more favorable in these years of competitions, almost like I was out in the wrong era of competing or whatnot. So